From FLX1.com and presented by FL1 Radio, I'm Josh Durso, and this is Inside the FLX. Today, we're getting an update on Seneca County. Back in April, we had two representatives from the Board of Supervisors Democratic Caucus on the program, and now we're going to get the Republican perspective on a number of the same issues. Waterloo Supervisor Bob Shipley, who serves as the board's chairman, and Lodi Supervisor Lee Davidson, who serves as the majority leader, are here this hour. Thank you both for being here. A lot to talk about, a lot of good news to talk about, a lot of good things that are happening in Seneca County. So thank you both for taking a little bit of time.
Absolutely, and good morning, Josh.
Thank you, Josh, for allowing us to be here.
Yeah, so let's, I guess, start off with quick intros. Obviously, most people know who the both of you are, but Bob, start with you. How you got involved with politics and why you're supervisor?
Okay, I've been a Waterloo County supervisor since 2003, I believe. I lose track anymore.
It's been a long time.
It's been very interesting. Good times and bad times and interesting times. But the county is moving forward, as you said, and there are a lot of awful good things happening in Seneca County.
Lee?
Thank you, Josh. I got involved in the town of Lodi because I wanted people to realize that Lodi is not a bad place. It's the Lodi Hotel used to have the worst name in the world, and I used to get picked on by certain people that used to work for the county. There's how many fights do they have at Lodi anymore, and we don't have that anymore. And the hotel is under reconstruction, and it'll be open one of these days, and I think it's going to be a great situation.
So obviously a lot of good things happening in the county right now, a lot of good news. Del Lago, big headlines over the last 2 years. Some of them have turned a little bit negative. But just as we stand right now, I guess that would be the first thing we could talk about. What is your feeling with Del Lago as it stands right now, despite some of the negative headlines, still a whole lot of money coming into Seneca County, right?
Lee, I'll jump in on this one. First of all, Del Lago has been an asset to Seneca County. They are the largest employer in Seneca County with a little over 1,500 employees. As we all heard, they are running a little under their projections as far as how much money they were going to take in on gambling. Obviously, Seneca County, as the host county, gets a percentage of that, and we're running. We were expected to get about a little over $3.5 million a year, and we're getting a little over $2 million a year. But it's still $2 million that we did not have before. Mm-hmm. So it certainly helps, and we are using that money as a backfill for our property tax reduction fund.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious, what has been the perspective from the southern end of the county as it pertains to Del Lago? Obviously, it's a win for the county as a whole, but I'm just curious what the pulse has been like, if you've been hearing from residents about what they think about Seneca County now having a casino.
Well, I think most of the people down there enjoy it. They enjoy the situation to be able to come up to Del Lago, and some of them enjoy gambling somewhat, and some of them enjoy the shows that they have, and it's just such a wide variety of things that Seneca County didn't have before, and you don't have to drive humongous amount. You might have to drive 35 or 40 miles from the south end to the north, but I mean, it's such a great place, and they run a great ship, I think. I mean, they've got such beautiful machines that people can do, and they've got the food and the entertainment and everything else, and I just heard on the radio this morning on the way here that they're going to have Larry the Cable Guy in the next few days or something like that. So I mean, he's got a big following for some of the antics that he does, Mm-hmm. So I think it's great.
And as far as the jobs go, I feel like that while a lot of discussion has been around how much money they've made or how much they haven't made, you can't really not talk about the job impact for Seneca County, right?
Absolutely. That's the biggest thing that Seneca County needed was jobs, and that's what they have fulfilled. True, they were projecting anywhere from 1,500 to 1,800, and they're closer to the 1,500 figure. But the folks out at Del Lago, their management team, are just wonderful to work with. And the owners, the Wilmot family, they're just top-notch people. And Lee, as you alluded, the facility itself is gorgeous. They certainly do things the best way they can, and make them nice for all the people around.
So another one of the issues that's been making headlines, land into trust. I guess before we actually talk about the issue itself, give us a little bit of an overview of what this means for the person who may not be following this issue super closely, Bob, because I know as the board, you guys have been dealing with this for years and years. Yeah. Walk us through it.
Well, when I came on the board back in 2003, this was an issue back then. And back then it was called the Indian land claim, where they were trying to extort New York State out of a lot of money. And quite frankly, that was a great thing that has morphed, and now they're going the federal route. But the most important thing to realize is, and as Rich Rickey pointed out to all of us, who was our original Indian Affairs chairman for a lot of years, and I think Rich taught all of us everything we know about what's going on with the Cayugas. But the most important thing to realize is that the land into trust in front of the federal government is a gaming application. And back when that started over 10 years ago, the landscape has changed dramatically from in New York State, where the state legalized gambling and casinos. And besides the Indian casinos, now you have 4 privately run casinos that are all of those are contributing to New York State. The Indian ones, on the other hand, the Senecas, who own 3 casinos on the western end of the state, have stopped their payments back the middle of last year. So it's up to the governor and the state of New York to get that situation straightened out. But we can only move forward with what we have. And that's why the negotiations from the governor, who negotiated all the Indian compacts and casino compacts and the private ones, that's what has changed dramatically since the Cayugas first filed for their gaming application, land into trust.
So what does, I'm very curious about this, southern end of the county, not necessarily as impacted because obviously the land is contained in Waterloo and Seneca Falls, but probably on the property tax front, just as big a concern for the folks who live in the southern end of the county, right?
Yes, it is, because this whole thing impacts the whole county. I mean, the amount of taxes that come into the county or that do not come into the county because of the Indian land claims and everything else. It's such a big thing. It affects all of us. You know, I mean, no, we don't have a lot of Indians land claiming stuff in the southern end of the county, but we certainly have more than we need in the north end of the county.
Right.
And it's just an unfair situation. You know, and
let me jump in there because it really affects 3 towns, Josh, primarily. Waterloo really is not one of them. Seneca Falls is by far and away the largest. The Cayugas have purchased almost 60 properties within the town of Seneca Falls. And why it affects all the entire Seneca County is because by law, Seneca County has to hold harmless the towns, the villages, and the school districts for the non-payment of property taxes. Mm-hmm. So that's the big thing why all property payers in Seneca County need to be concerned about this. The other 2 towns affected are Varick and Fayette. Now, I think there's only a few properties in those 2 towns. Most of them are the town of Seneca Falls. And quite honestly, the Cayugas probably owe Seneca County $2.5 million in unpaid property taxes, which Seneca County has had to step up and reimburse both the villages, the towns, and the school districts. So that's the big.
Getting your sense, is there a positive outcome on the horizon with this issue, or is this something that could very easily just continue to bleed into the future?
Well, two things. Number one, New York State has been sending money back to Seneca County for the past 3 or 4 years, reimbursing us some form of what the Cayugas have owed us. And it's not paying the Indians property taxes. It's just a reimbursement to Seneca County because they were doing that. New York State was doing that for years down in Oneida and Madison County. And when we found out about it and asked, hey, where's our share of this? That's when they started helping moving money towards Seneca County.
How troubling is it having to be so hooked into and reliant on the state to actually come through for the county? Obviously, there have been a number of initiatives from the governor's office that have made governing for you guys more difficult. Is this just another issue that the state has a little too much power with and should start to relinquish some of that so that things can equalize themselves?
That would be great if that could happen. That would be wonderful, but it's not come to pass, and I don't know. I don't think it's anywhere close to the future. There's just too much stuff from Albany that comes down to tell us how we have to do things, and as well. And I've got to say this: too many unfunded mandates we have as well. I'm sorry to hit that button, but
it's a buzzword, but it's true.
And our number one is Medicaid.
Right.
That costs Seneca County. Our payments are a little over $112,000 a week, which translates into about 60% of our total tax levy. And I use that all the times, and people that haven't heard that before are amazed at the amount of money that we have to send to Albany each week for just the Medicaid reimbursement. So with that eating up 60% of our total tax levy, there's not a lot of money left to do the things we should be doing: economic development, fixing our roads and bridges, of which our great friend, the New York State Comptroller, pointed out last year that Seneca County had the highest percentage of deficient bridges in New York State. Well, we only have about 35 bridges to start with, but because even though that's a small number, most of them need work on them. So that kind of kicked that category up for us, and we would hope that New York State would give us more funding to fix those deficient bridges, since they pointed out the fact that we had the largest number, but that has really remained the same and hasn't changed a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. And the other part of it that is New York State is one of the 2 or 3 states that charges the counties for the payment.
For Medicaid.
Yeah, for Medicaid.
Yeah. That's Medicaid's a federal program,
right?
And the feds pay 50% of it. Most other states pay the other 50%, but New York State passes down about 25%. The feds pay 50, they pay 25, and they pass the other 25 down to the counties. Mm-hmm. And in some of your larger counties, that's a big number.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the bigger successes, I'd say, for Seneca County over the last decade, Sampson Memorial Cemetery. The progress, the movement, the things you guys have gotten done. Obviously, Senator Nozzolio was a big help to that. Where does that stand? I know there were some sort of projects and things like that in store back a couple of years ago to continue growing. That's still moving forward?
It is still moving forward. In fact, we have a remaining grant funding that was secured back in those days by the senator to continue moving forward. And as it ended up, the Sampson Memorial Cemetery was put under the auspices of the IDA to run. Mm-hmm. Now it's been run by the IDA for a little over 7 years, and it reverts back to the county at the end of next year. So that's why we are very concerned, and we have been asking our representatives down in Albany to get support to have Sampson Memorial Cemetery dedicated as New York State Veterans Cemetery. New York State does not have any veterans cemeteries. In fact, they are the only state in the country that does not have a veterans memorial cemetery. So with everything in place, and we have about, I believe the latest figure is about 530 mostly veterans buried there at Sampson. But that reverts back to Seneca County next year. And Bill Yale and his team and the IDA have done a great job down there. And with all the help of Senator Nozzolio, and now we're looking to our Senator Helming for her help. And she is working on some support that helps get some funding in place for the cemeteries, but we need the help of all the veterans to go to all their elected officials from the state of New York to ask them to pass the legislation to make Sampson a New York State Veterans Cemetery. That would be my biggest request of all of our veterans to move this along, and thank goodness that we have Senator Helming, we have Assemblyman Kolb and Assemblyman Palmanzano, who was at the Memorial Day presentation or the commemoration of all the veterans. There was a few hundred people down there, and it was a great event. But we need to move that forward, and we need to make New York State a state veterans cemetery.
We also need to do that because of the latest news that I've read from the National Cemetery in Washington. They're running out of room. They're running out of room to put folks down there, and we need to be able to do this. And we've got an excellent place down at Sampson. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's being updated all the time, and it's just a great facility.
That's one of the things that we tried to get federal status.
Right.
But and as you probably know, that the ruling on the feds is that there has to be at least 100 miles from separation between the cemeteries, and the closest one to us is down in Bath, New York, and that's only about 65 miles away or so. So the feds are looking at another federal cemetery, I believe, in the Batavia area. And we were hoping we could convince them that Sampson would be a great place, but the 100-mile rule kind of complicated that.
So let's talk about how well the board has not been able to work together and to move forward on a bunch of different topics generally. The incinerator is one area where elected officials across the board seem to be unanimously opposed to and working together on. A number of other issues, though, especially in the county, when you get to the board meetings, there is a lot of debate. There is a lot of angst between supervisors. Is that just part of the political process, or does that need to be curbed back a little bit so that you guys can continue moving forward on a lot of the good things that you've been working on?
Well, debate is great on a number of issues. Everybody should understand all of the pluses and the minuses involving all issues. But there becomes a point where it's getting very close to trying to micromanage some of our department heads and our county manager. And we hired them for a purpose, to do their job, and we need to let them do their job, let them come to us with their recommendations of what they have found on these issues, and we need to trust their judgment on that. Lee, you want to jump in here on that? I see you smiling there.
Well, we definitely need to come together, Josh. That's a problem that we've had for quite a while, and I think I mentioned this the last time I was in this room, and that we need to work together a lot better than we do. When we come to Seneca County Board of Supervisors meeting, there's 10 of us that are town supervisors, and then there's four that are at-large supervisors. We need to forget about our towns as much as possible. I mean, there's some things you cannot forget about, but we need to be a county supervisor. We've got to look at the whole county. We can't have tunnel vision when we get to the board meetings. We've got to look at the whole thing for the county, not just for what might be good for our towns. You know, and this sometimes doesn't happen, as you well know. But we need to work together a lot better for the better of Seneca County. And this is a problem we've had ever since I've been on the board.
Right.
You know.
Well, there is really not a north-south divide, even though that's been publicized before.
Even though they call 336 the Mason-Dixon line in Seneca County.
Quite honestly, and I really truly believe that all the supervisors believe that we need to get done what we can get done for the best interest of Seneca County. Now that involves, here we spent almost a $10 million sewer project on Route 318 that's going to go from the outlet center to 414. That's going to spur economic development in that corridor. We need to be able to do that in the south. Especially, we have so many wineries, microbreweries, cideries, distilleries, and every time I go to a chamber-sponsored event where these folks are present, we hear, when are we going to get sewer and water? Well, we need to focus on the southern part of the county and bring that sewer and water to all of those folks down there. And that's how we're going to help spur economic development for everyone at both ends of the county. Lee, you agree?
Yeah, wholeheartedly. I mean, it's a given. We need. We've got the scenic byway that in the southern end of the county. It runs from Lodi all the way down into almost all the way to Watkins, and we've got in the little town of Lodi. There's 1,550 people that live in the town. We've got 14. I think it's 14 wineries. You know, and what gets me, most all of them have a Riesling, and they all taste a little touch different. I don't know how they do. I mean, I don't know how they do all these things. We've got some great wineries and great people running these things, and it's we've done some water studies, and I'm involved in one in the town of Lodi right now, and I had an engineer with me a couple of weeks ago, and we took a road trip, and in order to get funding from the federal government, you have to have so many people, so many miles in close proximity of where you want to have the water and sewer, and everybody's spread out too much. That's the problem. You know, we don't have enough people, and we're still working on it, but we're not going to quit. You know.
Now, the county does have some great employees, and one of the things that you guys have really seemed to focus on is allowing them to do their job, but also supporting them in their efforts day to day to get things done. What is your takeaway when you see some of the vitriol that is thrown toward those the county managers, some of the other employees of the county, as chairman of the board and then majority leader?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Yes, it is.
Go ahead, Lee.
Well, I don't mind. I mean, we had one long search to find somebody to be the county manager. We had several people we interviewed, and several of us were on the interview team, and I finally threw up my hands and I said, well, I guess maybe I don't need to be on this committee anymore to try to find a county manager, because some of the people I thought we should have hired, other people didn't, and my little 35 votes in Seneca County don't go far, you know, to get things through. But I think we need to support these people. We hired these people. We put them in a job and everything else. And some days, I don't care who you are. I mean, the three of us could be in a room and be working on something, and we could have difficulties from one end to the other. Right. You're going to have that. But I mean, when it comes to looking at things, I think the county manager is doing the best job he can do to try to manage the county and try to keep it within reason budget-wise and fiscally strong and everything else. But we need to work with him better than we have in the past, I think. So I don't know what else to say, Josh. I mean, it's an ongoing situation, and we've got an engineer down in Sam Preem, and I think he's doing as good a job as he can do of being still fairly new. He's been here 6 or 8 months, or I don't know how long he has been here, to be honest with you. I forget.
First part of the year.
Yeah,
right.
And so I think he's doing a good job, and he's I think he's helped things quite a lot. He's got quite a
taking on very complicated issues.
Oh Lordy, yes. I mean, you look at the water and sewer thing. That's been such an ongoing thing, and it's. I'll tell you what, it's a hard job. You know?
Well, it's a team concept all the way around. Both our county staff, our department heads, and the Board of Supervisors, and we all have to fit together. And I think the more we remember that and work together, I think it'll be better for all of us.
So get the crystal ball out. This is going to be my last question for you. Where do you guys see the county 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? Obviously, the pace has been growing, and it's been growing at a pace that's pretty exciting. Do you see that trend continuing, or do you see even more growth and positivity?
Absolutely. I think we're positioned for especially economic growth, especially on the 318, 414 corridor. But we have to look at the whole picture, and we have to try and make the entire county, from the north to the south, grow. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to invest in some of the areas, whether it be sewer and water in the southern part, whether it be in upgrading roads and bridges, whatever it takes.
All right, Lee?
One thing I'd like to see done, and I hope we can do this, is maintain employees. We do an awful lot of training of employees, and they stay around for a couple of years, which is the most expensive part of the thing, because we're training these people. And it takes a year or two to train a lot of these folks. I don't care if it's somebody in the sheriff's department, somebody in the corrections part, any part of this situation, or somebody in the human resources stuff and everything, and the. I'll tell you what, we've got some real good people. We've got some real good people, but the problem is, some of these situations hire these people away from us because they pay more. And what aggravates the devil out of me is, we've got Yates County that's got 25,000 people. We've got 10,000 more, roughly 35,000. They can pay more for some of their folks down there than we can. And we've got a big union thing coming up this year. And I'm the chairman of the Human Resources Department, and we're going to get this done before November. I'm going to have a big problem with somebody, I'll tell you.
All right.
We've been waiting every year till the end of the year to do this. That's too long. We need to have this done so we know how to budget. We start budgets in August.
All right. Well, I appreciate you two coming in today. Obviously, a lot of issues. I'm sure we'll be having you back to talk more about all the other things going on in Seneca County. But thanks for your time today.
Thanks for letting us be here.
Thanks, Josh.
That's going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Supervisors Davidson and Shipley, our listeners, and of course, FingerLakes1.com for making this program possible. You can catch Inside the FLX on Saturdays during the 10 o'clock hour on WDWN 89.1 FM in Auburn or 97.7 FM in Fulton. The program also airs Sundays and Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on Spectrum, channel 1304, and is available on iTunes, Stitcher, FO1 Radio, and the FingerLakes1.com app. Until next time, stay informed, Finger Lakes.